Hello, I am Justin Brown. My family, we farm by Lanesboro. Uh, I maybe have a little different perspective than folks here. I used to be in ag retail and I held a CCA for a little while. But since I farm full time, there isn't too much value in holding that anymore. But a couple things that we've tried over the years with nitrogen. Well, let's see, I got several notes here. For starters, we've probably been at the same nitrogen rate for 20 years. Typically, it's like 150 to 160 pounds on corn on beans, around 200 on corn. And over the years, we have tried some things with side dressing, both with top dress urea, a little bit with UAN, and I wasn't part of these MDA trials that they talked about up here, but other ones locally. And I kind of saw the same thing that people had seen here, just inconsistent results with side dressing. And for me, more specifically, side dressing is really hard, more on the logistics side of things. I don't disagree with it by any means. I think we saw some of that, but for me, the time that it would take to do that, the logistics of equipment, and we try to spray all of our own crops as well. And if we're trying to get 10 days worth of field work done in 8 days, that usually doesn't work very well. So we've decided not to pursue the side dressing piece of it. We'd have to hire that done, and I'm not excited about that either. I think a lot of us probably have bad experiences with having work hired out. And me being in past resale, I know how that goes. So we've kind of gone the route of using nitrogen stabilizers on our pre-plant incorporated. Throughout the years, we've used different ones, Instinct, which is nitropyrin, different DCD products. And in recent years, I've become a little more leery of those products just because, especially the nitropyrin, just because I'm not quite sure if the science is all there on what they're doing to other soil bacteria and microorganisms. The answer might be in this room, but for me, it's not something that I want to promote as slowing down or even killing other bacteria. So we've looked at other things such as ESN. We did use that for some time. In recent years, it's got a little more expensive, so we've shifted again, and I've tried some of the humic acid type products. Still not really too convinced that actually works. There is a few university studies out there on humic acids applied to nitrogen that they can actually do some nitrogen stabilization stuff, but it's not really too mainstream yet. One thing that I've learned in my prior job and also farming is that, just applying more nitrogen usually is not the answer. I think how we've improved, like I said, we've been the same nitrogen rate for years, but our yields have continued to increase. I attribute a lot of that to what we've done with soil sampling over the years. We're going on probably our 12th year of grid sampling. Some of our farms are on their 4th cycle of being grid sampled, and we've just tried to build our P&K where we want them, maintain soil pH where we want that, and now after all that time of getting those levels where we want them, we've kind of moved on to some of the more micronutrient type things because I feel like those are no longer limiting factors for us, and we've moved on to other nutrients per se. So, and then probably the next thing that we've done for nitrogen is cover crops. Played around with it for a long time, listened to a lot of people. I've got a couple crazy neighbors who are in the room here that have done some crazy things, and I think there's probably a lot of you in the room that are way out on the leading edge of the cover crop movement in our area. I myself am more on the laggard side of things, so I've watched a lot of folks do this, and what we settled on for our operation is we apply rye with fertilizer just broadcast in the fall after we take the soybeans off. And I don't incorporate that at all. With the next rainfall, it comes. And I know that probably goes against what a lot of you would say, but in the spring, even if it doesn't germinate in the fall, it'll germinate in the spring. And we always have a cover crop out there to some degree. Try to terminate that at like 6 to 8 inches or so. Last year, I learned the hard way that for us, letting that cover crop mature was a bad idea. I think on about half of our corn on soybean ground, we lost 20 or 25 bushels an acre. And I attribute that to killing the cover crop when it was more like 16 inches tall and not 6. So we're going to make a priority in our operation to terminate that cover crop at 6 to 8 inches. How we're going to do better in the future? I was the guy that asked the question earlier about the dynamic nitrogen modeling, and I think there is consensus among the educators in this room that that can work. I'm just hoping that that is something that we look at in the future as further advancing our nitrogen management. You know, there's a lot of discussion here today about why can't we find the right rate? Why is it so different from year to year? And it's because of weather. So if we can more understand what our weather is going to be, what it's done, how that's impacted the nitrogen in the ground, and make the decision at that time, we can do better. So the other thing, I think we would all be amiss to think that any of us in this room have all the answers. Each of us probably has a piece of it. And I think the way that you can become a better manager of your nitrogen is listening to lots of different folks, taking pieces from everybody, and figuring out what works in your operation. Because what I do is probably not going to work for you, but maybe you took away something.
Awesome. I'm Connor McCormick from Caledonia, Minnesota, and it's been a fun day so far. I love all the hard numbers. I went to St. Olaf College to be a veterinarian and ended up going down this goat path, cover crops, thanks to a professor who also loved the hard numbers, and their passion for it grew on me. So I did a lot of research on cover crops and tillage in college, and had the opportunity to move home to farm with my dad and grandpa. So I took that instead of going to be a vet, and I'm glad I did. It's been a great journey so far, and so for us, we're old-fashioned, or haven't changed a whole lot throughout the years. My grandpa still lives on the farm. He's turning 97 here, and he eats beef every day. So we got that much going for us. I will say that it's my dad and I right now together, and using the local office, the NRCS, and the Root River Soil Water Conservation District for me, my dad has been the biggest help because with their funding, we have learned a lot and just done a lot of different things. We were the first, I think, in Houston County. We hired an airplane when I was in college in 2014 to fly on a cover crop, and we got grant money through the office, and we've been doing cover crop ever since. So I think taking advantage of the people on the sides is huge. And so thank you guys for being here as well. I won't get into too much because I don't know a whole lot, but if you have questions later. So I'm 100% no-till, 100% cover crop on Hama Small. I'm farming only about 100 acres, and my dad's doing about 350. But it's been cool to see my dad every year has been doing a little more, or let me do a little more no-tilling and cover cropping on his acreage. And he's starting to see the benefits. So that's been a really neat thing because he's as old school as it gets. We're 6-row. We have 5 6620 combines that all of them need work, but altogether they're worth less than about anything else you can get. So anyway, we don't have any yield monitors. All me and my dad know is when we're combining, we look back in the glass, how that corn's flowing tells us a lot in the hopper, and how the corn looks throughout the season. So him and I have both seen that where we no-till into our rye, and definitely on the bean stubble and sod ground, we can get in there early, and even if there's manure, we get in there early because that rye really mellows out the soil and it dries it out sooner. And so that's been the first stuff we've been planting, and then that corn's ahead the rest of the year, and it shows in the fall. So he's seen that, or just the dark green color of that corn that we get in there. Get it in early, and we we got lucky 2 years ago when it was dry. So my dad is may know about the spraying. So we planted and killed the rye within the same week, and it was our best corn crop that dry year when a lot of people said they would never do cover crops again. We were like, well, we're not going to go without them. And so, I mean, for us, we're smaller, so, you know, one of us can be planting, one of us can be spraying, so that helps. So I understand the logistical issue. But, so with that being said, I guess favorite tools is we have a vertical feeder manure spreader. When we use that for our cow manure, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, you didn't even know you spread it. That does a real nice job. So with the cover crops, that's been a really nice tool. Making the planter more no-till, converting it over has been key. I just bought a drone, so going to be transitioning from using a plane for a cover crop into a drone. I've been using Terry Hamilton out of Adams, and he's been great to work with. I've been using him the last 5 years, but going to try doing some drone just to get that seed on a little earlier and give us a little more opportunity to catch a rain. And then through a CSP program, I figured I'd better bring this up, but I had to do a split application for my dad. He did a CSP, and that was what he signed up for. And so I found it kind of fun driving a fertilizer buggy through the field, trying not to hit the corn. I kind of like the challenge, otherwise I get a little bored spreading fertilizer. So since he made me do that, I've been doing the split application ever since. And we have seen that it, especially in the drier years and the lighter years, but definitely noticed a difference for us in a drier year when you use inhibitor. Doing the split application has helped us quite a bit.
I just want to tell you, if you gotta watch it, if you say you enjoy trying to miss the corn, you might find a cultivator or two for sale in this room.
So I'm Dana Allen Tully. I farm with my family, Vai Iota. We have a diversified dairy and crop operation. So I think what I'll go through is maybe our cropping rotation. With it being a dairy, we've got probably some different angles on how we handle our cropping rotation. Since we're able to harvest corn silage in September, that gives us the opportunity to no-till drill in winter rye. And so we get, as long as it's done by the end of September, we get really good growth on those fields. And then we're able to put manure on or inject manure in the fall because the crop is already up and established. And for the fields that we're going to terminate in the spring, there is some fields then that we harvest and use that to feed our cows. So we have not tried to do cover crops on any of our corn grain fields because I don't think that we're going to get any establishment. When we started going down the cover crop path, it was over 10 years ago, and we tried to fly some on, and at that time had maybe 20% emergence, versus what we're doing now is basically all of it comes up, with the exception of last fall. It was really dry on a couple 100 acres, so that did not come up. So that's one thing that we do. We also have canning crops are in our rotation, and that allows us to have a place for summer manure. We have a couple bedded pack areas, so we can apply that in July or June and July after sweet peas come off. And then we establish our alfalfa at that time. So the following year we're able to go ahead and harvest 4 full crops instead of miss the first 1.5. So we get a full 3 to 4 years of alfalfa tonnage. In terms of nitrogen management, like I said, most of our nitrogen comes from our manure application, and that's all injected. We do part of it in the fall, and then we do part of it in the spring, depending on fields. And then we also split applied. We put some starter on, or we put on a pre-plant nitrogen, and then monitor the crop as it's growing. So if it's a really wet year, there may be specific fields that we would go in and fly on some extra nitrogen because the nitrogen that we had was gone. So I think that's kind of covers. Our push, or our latest investment on the agronomy side, is technology. And so what we're really trying to do is hone in on how we become more site-specific on nutrient applications, planting populations, and things like that. So we've really made that focus in the last year, and then we're investigating some drone technology. So I think there's a lot coming on that front. We also do all of our own spraying. And let me think, about half of our acres are no-tilled. And the rest is conventional, predominantly because of the mirror. So I think that's it.
I'm Ben Storm. I farm between Dover and St. Charles, eastern part of Olmsted County. I think Justin here and I have a lot in common in our backgrounds. I spent about 7.5 or 8 years in ag retail myself before coming back to the farm full time. And I'll never forget the one day I had a farmer in my office in December pre-faying fertilizer, and he wanted to put on an extra, and I don't remember the numbers, 30, 40 pounds of N the following year on bean stubble. It was over 200 pounds total nitrogen plus his starter and everything else he was putting on. And I looked at him and I said, if you want to spend extra money, we can find other things to spend your money on. We don't need to put that much nitrogen on. When that farmer left, the boss walked in my office and chewed my ass. He told me, you do not ever tell anybody to not spend more money on fertilizer. You tell them, yes, sir, how many more tons do you want? Him and I had a lot of conversations like that over the years, and so, I mean, ag retail was interesting. I sometimes miss the camaraderie of running around and talking to farmers, but I also enjoy the challenge of farming. We raise corn, soybeans, have a few pigs, raised some oats last year. We are mostly no-till, been doing a little tillage the last few years because we did some tiling, did some manure, actually from Dana. So we had to work some stuff down and level it out again, but otherwise we're no-till. Do a fair amount of rye cover crop after soybeans. Dad helped me on the farm a lot, and the first year we seeded some rye after soybeans. Dad looked at me and said, what the heck are you wasting your money for? And then that next spring we had some awful heavy rains and some pretty bad washing around the area, and Dad looked at that field that had the rye on it and he says, well, nothing moved there. You're gonna do it all this fall then, right? Well, that also has its challenges as well. I think my rye was a little taller than yours, Justin, this last year when I planted into it. Turns out that when your rye is headed out, it takes a really long time to melt down. Whereas, that smaller rye, if it's not headed out, by the time you go out there 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, you can't even hardly find it in places. Well, that tall stuff, it was still there at harvest in places. And I mean, the corn did fine where the nitrogen was applied correctly. But as far as nitrogen goes, I've done a little bit of everything over the years. I had a Rawson zone till cart for a few years, 6 or 8 years. We were putting all of our N on with that for a while, pre-plant. Then that got to be a lot of stopping to fill. In some of the lighter ground, we had problems with the high rate of nitrogen that close to the seed causing emergence issues. So then we went to side dressing some of it with urea. I've since got rid of the Rawson zone till cart. We're straight no-tilling into the bean stubble for corn now, or bean stubble or rye cover crop. And in 2025, we're gonna go to dribbling out the back on both sides. We put about 60 pounds of N on with the planter. And then I had a set of easy drops show up the other day. We're gonna hang them on the sprayer and we're gonna put the rest of our N on the fat at that V5, V6 range is the plan. So nitrogen rates as well as the way I've been putting nitrogen on has really changed over the years. Anywhere from 160 pounds of N after beans to, I think last year we were in that 135 range. To be determined on 2025 yet, I guess. So I guess that's all I got.
All right, well, we've got some very interesting models here for how different types of farming operations and management. Questions from the audience of our panelists? Nobody's intrigued about, yeah, right there.
I have a question for Dana. When you apply manure onto your field, if you're going to slow down alfalfa, are you putting enough lime to counteract the acid effect with the manure? I mean, I've been by your plant, I know that you get a good catch on alfalfa, but are you doing anything additional? Because I know when I did manure on alfalfa, it does not take the stand. I mean, you kill alfalfa with manure on it.
So we put manure on before we seed it, and then we lime our alfalfa fields, and then also apply micronutrients in the spring every year. So that may be the reason for
What
this.
I'm going about is that when you have liquid manure, you have more of an acid effect than I do with my vital stuff, but yet, that's what I've noticed over the years applying manure on the hay ground.
Well, I will give my dad credit for this whole methodology, because he started it plenty years ago. But that's how we've always established our alfalfa, is we're able to put manure on in the fall or late summer, and then basically you gotta have it in the ground, seeded by August 10th or so, August the 5th, and then it comes up in the fall.
I think one of the speakers said they'd been putting on pretty much the same N rate for quite a few years. Have you guys also adopted cover crops, and would you see a need to adjust that N rate because of cover crop?
So I adopted cover cropping for a couple reasons. One, I was interested in cycling some nitrogen back into that crop later on because I'm not willing to side dress. So looking at other ways to do that, one way we could get some nitrogen to move later in the season is by having that cover crop breaking down. So looked into that, and then the reason for cover cropping is to keep a little soil life going and build some biomass maybe. But primarily it was that nitrogen delay that really got me into cover cropping. So I actually think I get more nitrogen by having a little cover crop out there than having to put more nitrogen on. Does that make any sense? So no, I don't put more nitrogen on. In fact, maybe we could even do less.
As far as interseeding, does for Kyle, as far as interseeding with the drone, when are you doing it? What kind of rates? Is it straight rye? What kind of growth do you get in fall?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'd say of the last 10 years since we've been doing it, half of them worked out. I've had a lot of people think we plain didn't even drop the seed. So I've done anything from 50 pounds of oats to 70 pounds of rye with a pound of radish, pound of grape. I'd say that's kind of my best luck. I push for a rye and I like a grape radish. Haven't seen much luck with putting a clover in there in the fall. I would say that overall, the earlier I've gotten it on, so talking in August, the better luck we've had getting it to catch. We've gotten in the most trouble when we put it on, you get an inch of rain that next week or two, and then no rain for 2 or 3 weeks. It'll germinate, and then it won't set a root, and it'll get fizzled out. So yeah, with the drone, my hope is just to kind of time some rains, get it on earlier, and try to time it out. Keep an eye on the forecast and try to get it on before rain. But I know a lot of guys are liking the oats option. I've had good luck doing that down by Caledonia, and this year we did it, and all the guys that did their oats, they had 6 inches of oats this fall, and it looked real good all winter. It was growing. The field was growing all winter from the oats. I just like the rye for the spring. Excuse me. But so going half and half, I think some guys up by Murfield do that and have good luck with that.
So we haven't seeded with a drone, but few years through the Minnesota Department of Ag nitrogen trials with Don Burnell, we added winter wheat in with our side dress nitrogen at like V4, V5, when the corn's not very big, and just left it out there, and we had a real good growth in the fall. I'm sure Don still has the pictures of it somewhere, but that worked out really well. The main reason we quit doing that is we quit doing it in 2023 with the dry weather we were having. I said there's no point in throwing it out there. I'm getting any rain. There's no rain forecast. I don't think it's worth my money to spend it. And then this last year, it just kind of got forgotten about. But we had really good luck with that.
How are you seeing it, Ben?
With an airflow.
Airflow.
Added in with urea.
Ben, so I was with a guy that did that exact same thing. He put urea on at V5, and then it was rye, not wheat. But we went in and looked at his rye. This was like September 1st, and there was some rye growing up in there. This is maybe like a foot tall, spindly, and then when we went to combine it, nothing was left. It had all died by then. So, and then from my experience with it, I don't think I like the flying out of the cover crops. I think it's too, what's the word?
Variable.
Too variable for me.
Other questions? Black.
Somebody had talked about stabilizing nitrogen with carbon. You talk about apples that you're using and how you're doing it.
Nope. I don't know enough about it yet. Still learning. Back when I was in ag retail, the Helena salesman came around. They sell this product called HydroHume. There's other humic acids on the market too, but he actually was showing us a study from South Dakota State that was a legit study, and they showed that with that product they were showing some nitrogen stabilization effects. I've never seen anything else. Dan, you probably disagree with me completely on this. I know the U of M is a little bit sometimes shy to recommend things like that, but I hope that there's something there because it makes sense to me, especially for us when we have low organic matter soils. Most of our stuff is like 2.5% organic matter, so pretty low. And so I think that the humic acid stuff means even more to me on that type of soil than other people. Ben?
Well, I didn't see what form are you using? Is it urea mostly?
Yeah.
So I said what happens essentially with, you look at ammonium thiosulfate with UAN, it produces acidity at the point of injection. So it will act somewhat like a urease inhibitor. So that could be, you might see some of that with the urea. It's not as long-lived as something like we see within the commercial agritane, but there could be something there because I know Jay Goose at North Dakota State's looked at this, and I know specifically with ammonium thio, which will acidify that zone. That's why a lot of growers will ask me about stabilizing your UAN in season, and if you're putting ammonium thio at, it can get close to like 90 or 8% of the total N. It'll act as it's a force stabilizer, but it'll work with that. So that could be part of it with it. So any acidity, you'll see will give you maybe some benefit. It's maybe not as good as some of the other commercial products, but it might do some of the same things.
Let me ask Justin a question. If I was water sampling in your area wells, and you found out that the wells in your area were 15 parts per million or so, what would be the first thing in your farming operation you'd look at?
So I think we go back and look at what Kevin was talking about earlier today, that that water has lots of different sources, and it's hard to understand where that's coming from. I don't have enough information to answer this question, and nor would I do a good job answering it. So I can't. I'm sorry. I think Here's how I would answer that. And I think this goes to all the farmers in this area. And take this as speaking to the educators in this room, and people that may have influence in the legislation on this. As a collection, us Southeast Minnesota farmers, we are all moving in this trajectory of better nitrogen management and more education. Now, some of us are on a faster speed than others, but the trajectory is positive.
Sure.